Well, hello everyone, how are you? Pastor Zach and Kristin Sgro here to go through another session of emotionally healthy relationships with you all. And today we are going to revisit the iceberg, which, if you recall, Pete Sgro uses as an illustration in his book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, to describe the depths and layers of who we are as people. An iceberg, as you all know, is just a giant mass of ice with, the part that we see above the water has some snow on it, maybe some hills and things that look like mountains. But the majority of that iceberg is really what exists below the surface of the water, deep down into the murky and dark parts of the water, where actually 90% of that iceberg exists. And Sgro uses the iceberg as an analogy to describe who we are as people. Oftentimes we, and I know that you do this as well as I, sometimes only present 10% of who we actually are to the people that we come in contact with on a daily basis, when in reality who we really are, who our interior self is made up of, is that 90% of the iceberg that's below the surface that we don't allow anybody to see for a variety of different reasons. Maybe it's because we fear that they know who we really are and the thoughts that go through our head if we allow them into that space. Maybe in reality we don't know how to even access that 90% of who we are, which exists below the surface. And so the problem is, and I'm sure many of you can identify with what I'm about to say, and it's this: there are ways and things that we feel, there are ways in which we act, there are things we do and don't do that we just really don't have a good explanation for why we do those things, or why we feel that way. Maybe sometimes, all the time, we're just generally a jealous person, an anxious person, or we're depressed all the time and we're sad, and we just don't know why. And in a very real sense, we have, not only do we have trouble relating with others, we have trouble relating with ourselves. Right. What that does is it leads a large majority of us at some level, all of us at some point in our lives, to fake it till you make it kind of a mentality, living a double life. Or at the very least, you paint on a happy face. For those that you interact with on a daily basis, they can see you and at least think that you're happy when underneath you're really not. And so at any rate, if that's you, and to, like I said earlier, to some extent it's all of us, we've got to dive deep beneath the surface of the water to go after that 90% of the iceberg that makes up who we are. If, and it's a big if we truly want to learn to love ourselves, love others, and love God, which is the essence of true Christianity and what I would call holistic living. And so, before I briefly compare and contrast two biblical characters as an example today, I want to ask you, Kristin, to briefly describe your journey to our viewers below the surface of the iceberg, whether you're just have dipped your toes into the water, whether you've dove deep into the iceberg. Maybe share with our viewers what that has looked like a little bit in your journey thus far.
Sure. Something that stood out that Zach said was, in the very beginning, you said a statement, sometimes you don't even know how to get and access this stuff that's beneath. That's been most of my journey. Most of my journey has been, I didn't even know that I was accessing it when we were accessing it. And I have to kind of look back now in order to see what he's brought me out of. Because when you're in it and you don't know that that's what you're doing, it gets very confusing. There's just a confusing time. I think it's fair to say most of my life in the past 6 years, I've been confused quite a bit, right?
Yeah. Has the journey been difficult?
Yes. So when I was asked this question, here's what sticks out to me. We need to cultivate perseverance. This is a marathon, it's not a race. And so I did not understand the perseverance that was going to be required. Like anything in life, I see a problem and we're going to fix it. God, we're going to fix it right now. And it doesn't work like that, because a lot of times he doesn't reveal most of the times, actually, in my whole time of doing this, he does not reveal all at one time. Maybe you have a problem come up, and you just start realizing something about yourself, and then he might not even give you any clarity on it for months. You're kind of just stuck at this, man, I see something wrong with me and I don't like it. So, I'm 36 years old. The things I've struggled with, these did not happen overnight. It took 36 years to make me sitting here right now. And so it's not a quick unraveling, and he right now is reparenting me. So if anything, it doesn't, we were watching a movie the other night. It doesn't matter. It was Cool Runnings. If you haven't seen it, it's
Cool Runnings, man, 1993.
1990, I'm sure
Safe
all of
for
you.
the kids.
Yes, I'm sure all of you have seen it. They don't win at the end. Spoiler alert, they don't win the race. But I was struck by this idea of it's not being the first across the finish line. It's just finishing. And so whether you're weak or crawling across the finish line, you just persevere.
That's good. I think you said something there that caught my attention, reparenting. You need reparented.
Yes.
And I think that's a good word. And so I appreciate your honesty. And even as we go through this, to thank you in advance for your bravery, for whatever it is that you share and bits and pieces of your story. But in a few minutes, we're going to briefly share with you what it can look like to start to dive below the surface and begin to explore that 90% of the iceberg that remains unseen to the onlookers in your life. But if this is something that you've never done before, I want you to think of it kind of as like a first-time exploration. And as many as you may know, when you explore something for the first time, it's not really until you go to the second or third or fifth or 25th time of exploring it that you begin to unearth the deeper, more valuable things, the deeper treasures that exist within you to help help you learn about who you are. And so it's good to be nervous. It's good to even be fearful, but think of it as something that you're doing and exploring for the first time, and know that first exploration is going to be bumps along the road and it's going to be difficult. But over time, although the journey will remain painful, you will be able to do that more and more. And so I want to make a bad transition back to the two biblical characters that I want to share with you to give you guys kind of an idea of where we're heading with this. And as you know, Jesus had 12 disciples, and the two that I'm going to share with you today are Judas and Peter. They are two disciples that both betrayed Jesus, but couldn't have had two more radically different outcomes in their life. Whoop, I clicked off my notes here. So on the one hand, you've got Judas, and he sells out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. He consummates his betrayal with a kiss, handing Jesus over to the religious leaders in the Garden of Gethsemane. And those religious leaders eventually partner with Rome to murder and crucify Jesus. And as many of you know, Judas seemed to have some level of repentance in his life. He gives back the 30 pieces of silver, but then catastrophically ends his own life. He commits suicide, and he's never truly able to internalize and receive the forgiveness that even Jesus offered him. Keep that in mind. As we look at Peter as well betrayed Jesus, denied him 3 times, and then because of his failure goes back to his old profession of fishing. And even though it was extremely difficult for Peter to face Jesus and be restored to him, we see at the end of John's gospel that there is reconciliation and restoration that occurs with Peter and Jesus. And so, what was the reason Peter was able to receive Jesus' love and forgiveness for his betrayal and Judas wasn't? So I'm going to propose an answer to you all, and it's from what we've learned in regards to emotionally healthy spirituality, and it's this. Judas could not reconcile his inner self with his outer life. Secondly, he didn't know how to relate to others in a healthy way. And he certainly didn't know how to handle failure and a life that didn't live up to certain expectations he had, or maybe his parents had, or others had of him. Judas's interior, the seat of his emotions, was not integrated with his external self. And therefore, he was emotionally unhealthy. He was emotionally unstable. And as a result, all of his relationships were unhealthy, even his one with Jesus. And thus, his emotions ruled over him. He couldn't gain control of those emotions and what was going on inside of his life and his heart. And his emotional response led to yet another terrible decision where he took his own life. Peter, on the other hand, was able to receive healing from Jesus and internalize the love that Jesus had for him. And while I don't believe Peter had a total healing in the scene that I'm going to share with you all, I do think that the deciding factor in why Peter was able to come back from such a terrible experience, from such a terrible decision to betray Jesus, is that this is the key right here. This is the key of being able to receive and internalize Jesus' love and to come back from those experiences in your life that have caused you so much pain and so much trauma. And it's this, and this is key. You've got to have a willing heart to go back to those experiences of pain and trauma in your life. Not just to go back to them by yourself, but to bring Jesus with him. And to some extent, if you've been studying and following along with us, you bring others with you. And so if you recall, Jesus appears sometime after the resurrection on a beach waiting for his disciples while they were out there fishing. And Peter, realizing it's Jesus, you remember the scene, puts on his coat. Don't know why he puts on a coat to jump in the water, but he does, and swims to meet Jesus. And when they all get to the shore, if you can remember the scene, Jesus has a fire of coals burning, which was present when Peter denied him earlier on in the story. And so what Jesus is doing here is he's recreating the scene of Peter's betrayal. And it's not because Jesus is cruel. That's not why he's doing that. Jesus is trying to help Peter dive deep below the surface and to reflect on his experience and to get Peter to receive and internalize Jesus' love and forgiveness. And that's exactly what occurs here. And it's in this moment where the fire and heat of Jesus' love begin to melt that iceberg that exists within Peter. Peter denies him 3 times. And so Jesus asks him 3 times if he loves him, securely establishing his love in Peter's heart. And Peter is starting to realize this. Jesus is deeply implanting his love and forgiveness into Peter, and the results of which are healing for Peter. And it begins to take root and start working. And so, what's the key factor? Again, I want to tell you, you must be willing to go back. You must be willing to go back to your pain and your trauma and the experiences of your childhood and your young adolescence and your adolescence and any experience that has marked a pivotal moment in your life. And you must be willing to go back there with Jesus so that you can receive healing. And as Sgro has as a title of one of his chapters in his other book, you go back in order to go forward. And so today, my wife, I'm not going to say she has graciously offered, as it's come with the poking and prodding of me, although she has graciously chosen to do this, is we're going to share with you a bit of her exploration into her iceberg, and it's on page 83 of the Emotionally Healthy Relationships workbook. And she's done the work a little bit pre-time, but so we're going to go over that with you guys now. And so before this recording, Kristin did the exercise, and there were 3 questions that she was to come up with answers to. The first of which was, what are you sad about? Number 2 is, what are you anxious about? And number 3 is, what are you glad about? And so, Kristin, what did you come up with?
Well, so for the question, what am I sad about? Lately, I'm noticing that I do not have, it's been there my whole life, but I'm really noticing it. I do not have the capacity to love like Jesus and be selfless. he was full of the Father's love and was and is full of love for me, I fall so far short and see my motives most of the times are to love because I benefit. And that's painful because he does not love me because he benefits off of me. He loves me because he's my creator. And he loves every part of me, the good and the bad and the ugly. And, you know, he isn't benefiting off of me because he loves me. And so seeing that I can love others a lot of the times because I benefit from it is gross to me. Rather than, you know, I'm on this journey now where, you know, that's been brought to my attention in a gentle way, nothing that's, you know, mean or harsh or anything, just character issues that I see. He's now helping me to set out on this journey of looking at people and finding what I just enjoy. Enjoy not because I benefit from it. I mean, I benefit because I'm enjoying it, but just seeing, like, we'll start with our kids, right? Just seeing, you know, my middle child has very motherly instincts, right? I didn't teach her that.
Yeah.
She just naturally is like that, right? And I love seeing that. It's just, it's not, yes, I benefit from it, but it's not even because I benefit from it. Really wanting to see the whole person.
So what you're saying is, just trying to encapsulate what you're sharing, is that, you know, as you've begun to explore where these emotions and feelings come from, you see that as you begin to explore those, Jesus is changing them to where you're maybe in a better place internally to receive his love and to love others more freely, not for this sole purpose of benefiting, like you said, even though you're probably benefiting more now than you ever have.
Right. I'm enjoying people. You know, before, you know, we have 4 kids, so like any amount of silent time that I can have, you know me, I race to it whenever I can find a minute of silence. And I mean, Jesus was always about people and always pursuing them. And so, you know, I can become so focused on the molding and shaping of our kids' character that I forget to just enjoy them, that they're on a journey to be molded and shaped, and it's not going to happen overnight. So I need to look for the things that are good in them, because, you know, my mentors, you know, I have, you know, 2 that I'm thinking of, that they will say, we're not all good and we're not all bad. And so, you know, it can be really hard to get out of this rut if you're helping people, if you're in a position of ministry, like, oh, help them. And, you know, yes, we're helping, but there's good parts to people.
So let me ask you this. It's been painful. I know some of those parts that have been painful. As you've looked at where these emotions come from, and in particular, we're talking about love here, and maybe there's some anxiety related to love, maybe there's some sadness related to your love. Where do you, and this is the painful part of what we're going to ask, and you only go as far as you want to go and share, but where do you think that comes from? That pain, the sadness, the anxiety maybe that you're having over love and that particular emotion?
You know, much deeper than what we have time for, obviously, right now.
And if we're honest, what we're willing to share to
and
Facebook
what I'm willing
world
to share
and
in Facebook
YouTube world.
So,
for the 3 of you that are watching.
Yes, if that. So just past relationships, upbringing, you know, from when I was born all the way into where I'm at right now. You know, the experience of love or the lack of love, you know, the selfishness that maybe was never molded and shaped out of me. And so here I am at 36 trying to love well for people in my home, you know, including, you know, my husband. You can be easier to love because you're more mature. You know, so it comes from past relationships, my choices in those relationships, and actually even my own heart. You know, maybe I wasn't receiving in those times that people were loving me, and I do think that I was not able to receive even the love that was given me. I was not able to receive that. And maybe that goes
One
back
one
to my
final
dad.
question.
That I know.
One final question.
Sure.
Do you think you have work left to do?
Till the day that I die.
And as do I. And I think we're going to end on this note, is that although exploring that iceberg and doing the hard work of going back, I'll speak for myself, it's not something that I'd change. Certainly not something that I'd want to do over again, due to the pain and the suffering that can be caused from that. But here's the reality of the benefit. I'll use your word benefit, is that the person I am today compared to the person I was a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I'm such a better follower of Jesus, lover of my wife, lover of my children, family man, leader, pastor, worker, whatever the case may be. And that even though the journey's been painful, there has been much joy in the suffering of that journey, because of the deepening of my faith and growth in Jesus and becoming more and more like him.
Yeah, I was even thinking when I was answering these, like, life is sweeter now. I'm still selfish, but there is a, like, wow, there's more out there than just myself and my issues.
Yeah.
And yes, you be intentional with Jesus, with the Father, to go deep, but like realizing perseverance. He might not reveal stuff for you for the next 2 years on certain things that you're wanting to know about. And so really realizing there's a life outside of myself. I can enjoy people. I can enjoy my kids, and life can be sweet. It doesn't have to be gloom and doom and all of the suffering, even though that's there, acknowledging that, but choosing to focus on the good and enjoy the good that's in front of me.
That's good. Well, I want to thank you for giving the world, a small part of the world, that is, a window into your journey. And I want to thank you guys all for tuning in. And as always, may you go in the grace and peace and mercy of Jesus. We'll see y'all later.